Imagine a scenario where small and insignificant Bulgaria could change the course of history by joining the Entente instead of the Central Powers. This could have prevented the civil war in Russia through an early united victory, which in turn would mean no communism in Europe. Moreover, the United States might never have intervened in World War I, meaning no self-determination ideas, and Europeans could do as they please. Let me show what would have changed if Bulgaria had joined the Entente in World War I, and how it would have affected the entire continent. When World War I began, Bulgaria declared neutrality, but both the Central Powers and the Entente approached it with offers to join. The Entente promised Bulgaria parts of Macedonia, which it would force Serbia to cede in exchange for joining its bloc. On the other hand, the Central Powers promised Bulgaria everything it ever wanted: all of Macedonia, the Niš region from Serbia, and all of Dobruja from Romania. This was the main reason why Bulgaria historically joined the Central Powers. Bulgaria was led by Ferdinand I, an Austrian nobleman, but this had little impact on the country's choice. To persuade Bulgaria to join the Entente, it needed to offer a more advantageous proposal with slightly less territory than the Central Powers, but also lower risks. The problem lay with Serbia, which would have to give up all of Macedonia and part of southeast Serbia. It can be said that Serbia was able to form Yugoslavia in a historical perspective, so giving up these lands in exchange for land in the Green Zone is pure profit. However, until 1918, the Entente did not expect the complete disintegration of Austria-Hungary, so it planned for Serbia to receive only Bosnia and Herzegovina in exchange for Macedonia for Bulgaria. It would not be a good deal for Serbia, as it would essentially be exchanging Macedonia for territory with the same population and level of development. Historically, Serbia has claimed that Macedonia is more important to it than Bosnia and Herzegovina, so such a deal would have zero chances of success. That's why it would be difficult for the Entente to negotiate with Serbia, as they needed to somehow predict the catastrophic collapse of Austria-Hungary and promise Serbia all of the Western Balkans. In any case, for the purposes of this alternative history, I would suggest having the Entente promise Serbia to form Yugoslavia in exchange for Macedonia for Bulgaria. I remind you that this may be unrealistic, as the Entente could not guarantee the fulfillment of these promises at that time. But let's remember the London Agreement of 1915, when Italy was promised lands but did not receive everything that was promised. The Entente could have simply lied. How Dante could attract Bulgaria to his side, but on the condition that, considering the size of the Serbian kingdom and its state of war, Serbia would not be ready to give up all of Macedonia's territories, as this would significantly reduce its size. Therefore, Bulgaria would be allowed to annex Macedonia only after the war ended, to which Serbia would agree, as it itself would be expanding in the Western Balkans. This small twist of events could have changed the course of history, as Bulgaria, described as Germany's most loyal ally in the Great War, would have found itself on the opposite side of the conflict. This would have been a significant boost for Dante and a serious blow to the Central Powers. Historically, Serbia did not face problems resisting Austria-Hungary on its own, and it only suffered defeat when Bulgaria joined the enemy and quickly captured Serbia. This time it will not happen, and Serbia will successfully resist Austria-Hungary, which will greatly undermine Austrian morale. Considering the proposal for Bulgaria, it is quite possible that the Bulgarians will enter the war much earlier, possibly at the beginning of 1915. Rather than at the end, which is an important point for further discussion. With Bulgaria and Dante, the Ottoman Empire will be more cautious in choosing sides, yet this will not prevent some Ottoman admirals from bombarding Thessaloniki, which will lead to the Ottoman Empire joining the Central Powers. Jokes aside, I think the entry of the Ottoman Empire on the side of the Central Powers will not be such a big problem, as they may see it as an opportunity to regain their lost lands from the First Balkan War, mainly at the expense of Bulgaria. Thus, the Ottoman Empire will indeed join the Central Powers, and this decision will be facilitated by Bulgaria's entry on the opposite side. Of course, there is an alternative where the Ottoman Empire remains neutral, as Dante would be in a stronger position, but then everything would be completely different in the Great War, and predicting that is too difficult. For the purposes of this video, I would prefer that the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers as it historically did, since the other alternative requires a separate video. The scenario I chose is actually 10 times more interesting, as with Bulgaria on Dante's side, the campaign in Gallipoli could have been a huge success. Britain's goal was to capture Constantinople to assist Russia through trade across the Bosporus, also hoping for the capitulation of the Ottoman Empire. Historically, the campaign at Gallipoli ended in failure and required a naval invasion of well-fortified Ottoman positions. This time, with Bulgaria on Dante's side, they would have the opportunity to expand into the eastern regions after the war, capturing the modern cities of Burgas and Varna. However, before that, the Bulgarians must win the Great War. I want to tell about the First Balkan War in 1912, when Bulgaria nearly captured Constantinople, but failed in the First and Second Chatalja operations. The Bulgarian troops never fully conquered the city, and their failure was mainly due to a lack of resources and the fact that they waited too long, allowing the enemy to fortify and take defensive positions. The Chatal Line was the last hope of the Ottoman Empire to preserve Constantinople during the First Balkan War. However, in this alternative scenario, the Bulgarians learned their lessons, and the capture of Constantinople by the Bulgarian army became a very real possibility. Considering that Bulgaria is currently attacking Ottoman troops on the front, and Britain is also launching a campaign in Hypia in coordination with the Bulgarian offensives, one can confidently assume that Constantinople will fall quickly. This will significantly simplify the supply of vital resources to Russia, which may be a key factor in preventing the Bolshevik Revolution, as the war will evidently end faster due to the rapid defeat of the Central Powers. Moreover, Russia will be able to receive support through the Bosphorus Strait, which will eliminate resource shortages and sharp price fluctuations. As for other fronts, I assume they will look quite similar, but key events will occur several months earlier. This means that trench warfare will begin sooner on the Western Front, and battles like the Battle of the Somme will occur much earlier. This is important, as the Brussels offensive operation will be more successful in capturing parts of Gaul, which may prompt Romania to join the Entente earlier than it did in our history. When Romania joined the Entente in our timeline, it quickly capitulated and was occupied. But in this scenario, this will not happen, as Bulgaria and Serbia will still be standing, as well as Russia. That is why I believe Romania will be able to join the Entente much sooner, especially if the Entente captures Constantinople in the middle of 1915. This will further shift the balance of power in favor of the Entente. But that's not all. Italy is likely to join the Entente around the same time as in our history. By 1915, the Entente will have Bulgaria, Romania, and Italy as allies, while the Central Powers will only have the Ottoman Empire, which has just lost Constantinople. At this pace, the Central Powers could be defeated before the United States enters the war on the side of the Allies. This would make the peace treaty completely different, considering the absence of self-determination ideas mainly proposed by Woodrow Wilson. On the Western Front, I would say that Germany will be much more aggressive, trying to capture Paris at any cost, and then focus on defeating Russia. I see that the Entente may be pushed back on the Western Front, but on all other fronts, it will perform very successfully. I would say that Austria-Hungary will find itself in a particularly vulnerable position. Let me explain why. Firstly, Serbia has never capitulated and holds its ground. Moreover, with Bulgarian support, it seems that Serbia will never surrender in this war. The second problem for Austria-Hungary is Romania, which is rapidly advancing into Transylvania. Russia, on one side, is trying to capture Galicia, while the Italians are mainly in the mountains, but occupy a significant part of the Austrian army. This means that Austria-Hungary is at war on three fronts, which, to put it mildly, is extremely unpleasant. Russia's goal at the start of hostilities was to capture Galicia, cross the Carpathians, and enter the Pannonian Plain, seizing Budapest, which would force Hungary to either rebel or surrender. Although this operation historically ended in failure, and the Russians mainly reached Galicia, the situation is different now. Serbia continues to hold Austrian forces, and Romania is actively occupying Transylvania. Therefore, it can be confidently said that Russia will be able to cross the Carpathians and threaten Hungary. In this case, I expect Hungary to rise on a national level, as it will find itself on the losing side of the war. The Hungarian part of Austria-Hungary joined only because Austria wanted to punish and subjugate Serbia. Now Hungary risks losing Slovakia to Russia, Transylvania to Romania, and its South Slavic territories to Serbia. This will be a national catastrophe for the Hungarians, and they will try to rebel and change sides. This pastime will be very convenient, as Franz Joseph will die in 1916, and when this is officially announced, Hungary will break its personal union with Austria and try to join the Entente to minimize its losses. One could say it's unrealistic, but I doubt Hungary will fight to the last to help Austria. The fact is that the Entente is much more competent in this alternative reality, so the Hungarians will have to act differently than in history. As for the South, The Greeks were historically divided between joining the Central Powers, supported by the Greek king, and entering the Entente, supported by the Prime Minister. Historically, Greece was temporarily divided into two parts until it joined the Entente in 1917. But this time I would say the situation will be significantly different. Greece's joining the Central Powers under such conditions would be unlikely. Firstly, they would have to unite with the Ottoman Empire, which is unlikely to happen. Secondly, even if the Central Powers won, Greece would only receive Bulgarian territories and Cyprus, and might even cede part of its lands to the Ottoman Empire. This does not guarantee success at all. Thus, in this alternative reality, the split will not occur between joining one side but will be related to something else. The king will advocate for neutrality, while the prime minister will lean towards the Entente. Considering how the Entente is gaining the upper hand over the Central Powers and controlling Constantinople, I would say that Greece is much more inclined to join the Entente much earlier, as they will be promised some lands in Anatolia. As I move away to the European continent, I predict that by 1916, Europe will look like this if Bulgaria joins the Entente, which, although it seems a minor fact, could radically change the situation. The absurd situation allows for the capture of Constantinople and significantly more successful defensive actions, as well as giving Romania, Greece, and Italy the opportunity to join the conflict on the side of the Entente several months or even years earlier, which is an undeniable advantage for the Entente. In the next period, the Hungarians will assist the Entente in eliminating most of the Austrian forces, which will compel Germany to seek the annexation of the Austrian part and force Austria to continue the war on their side. As for the Ottoman Empire, it will lose hope and prefer to conclude a softer peace treaty. I remind you that, as in the case of Greece, the Ottomans were historically divided on which side to take or whether to participate in the conflict at all, but due to the reckless actions of a few individuals, they joined the Central Powers, which was not very popular. This, combined with the capture of Constantinople, could lead to a softer peace agreement for the Ottoman Empire. As a result, Germany will find itself almost alone against the entire world, and the likelihood of the United States joining the Entente will increase, putting Germany in a very difficult position. Historically, the Germans had a chance to win the war after Russia's capitulation and the signing of the Brest Peace Treaty. But now, Russia is far from capitulation, and the same goes for France. Considering this, I believe that Germany may also exit the war earlier, possibly at the end of 1916 or the beginning of 1917, hoping for a softer peace treaty and the chance to try again in the next war. Thus, the Great War would have ended with an Entente victory. But more importantly, Russia never capitulated, and the United States did not enter the war or impose its self-determination ideas. Let me show you how a peace treaty might have looked. In the Balkans, Bulgaria would receive its sought-after lands from Serbia, as well as parts of Western Thrace, which was part of the Ottoman Empire. Serbia would have expanded into the Western Balkans as it historically did, but Italy would likely have retained the promised lands in Dalmatia according to the London Treaty of 1905, possibly due to the absence of self-determination ideas proposed by Woodrow Wilson. Greece would receive the Aegean coast, including the city of Smyrna, but the Entente had other plans for Constantinople. Historically, the Entente wanted to make Constantinople an international zone under the control of the League of Nations, so this plan could very well come to fruition. As for the rest of the Ottoman Empire, Russia will capture the Armenian part, while France and Britain will divide the Middle East, as happened in our reality. But I suppose they will be less cruel to the Kurds and allow them to keep most of northern Syria and Iraq. Returning to the Balkans, Romania will receive most of Transylvania, except for the northern part, which will go to Hungary. This is done for two reasons. First, Bulgaria will not accept an enlarged Romania without compensation. And second, Hungary helped the Entente, so it will not be punished too harshly. That is why Hungary can keep Vinyu at the expense of Yugoslavia, while Russia will take all of Galicia. The Poles strive to create their kingdom, as they want to reduce the number of rebellious population. As for the rest of Austria, it's hard for me to predict what will happen to it. I want to do something very interesting and original, but remember that it is not entirely realistic. I will turn Austria into Bohemia, where the Habsburgs under Charles I will continue their role. This is because Dante does not wish to have weak and separate Austrian and Bohemian states that Germany could later annex, as happened in the alternate Great War. Hungary will not let Slovakia go, as it will be part of the deal between them and Dante, and they will also receive Burgenland. As for Germany's colonial issues, everything will happen exactly as it did in reality. Two changes in Europe will be that the peace treaty will resemble the historical one. France will receive Saar and establish a protectorate in Saxony, while Belgium will receive Eupen and Malandi. However, I doubt that Denmark will receive any free land, as the war lasted almost 2 years shorter, and Germany will not be too harshly punished in the east. I see that Russia will capture Kovet in the Volsky region, which translates as Great Poland and is the homeland of the Polish nation. These lands will be transferred to the Polish kingdom, which should calm the Poles and prevent their attempts to leave Russia in the near future, thereby stabilizing the Russians. From a bird's eye view, this is how the situation in Europe will look in this scenario.